Hi everybody. Today we're gonna be talking about the main card of UFC 287. I'm gonna be giving my thoughts on how the fights are gonna go, what I think's gonna happen, and yeah, let's get right into it. So the first fight we have is Raul Rosas Jr. versus Christian Rodriguez. I'm not gonna lie, the only reason that this is on the pay-per-view is because Raul is 18 years old, which is great for him and everything, but I'm not sure that it really warrants being on a pay per view straight away. I think because he is 18 and they're trying to kind of push him as this new guy, they're obviously not gonna give him super tough matchups straight away. So I do think he's gonna win. I think he's gonna win by a decision because Christian had a nice anaconda in his last fight. So I don't think Rao is just gonna like run through him in the grappling like he did in his UFC debut. But anyways, on to the next fight. By the way, you might be able to tell I'm not like super interested in this fight. I just think it's on the main card because he's 18, not because it's like a crazy competitive fight. So I'm gonna have more to say about the other fights, but yeah, let's move on. So next fight we have is Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Kevin Holland. So a couple of things to note before going into the prediction. Kevin Holland fought Stephen Thompson like just about 4 months ago, and in that fight he got quite badly beat up, and he also broke his hand, I think. Bear in mind this is 4 months ago. I think that his quick turnaround is maybe not the best idea, especially if he did break his hand. Like stuff like that, you need to take time to recover. And then the other thing is he also got beat up quite badly by Stephen Thompson. Getting kicked in the head, spinning kicked in the head, stuff like that. We've seen in the past where like a guy will fight someone and then get beat up quite badly or take a lot of punches, and then in the next fight they just don't look the same. Like the main example I can think of is when Stipe fought Francis the first time. He obviously won the fight. He won pretty much every round, but he still got hit quite a bit by Francis. And then when we saw Stipe against DC about 6 months later, he got knocked out like pretty easily. I'm not saying that Kevin Holland is going to get knocked out, but I don't think we're going to see the best version of Kevin Holland. So what I think is going to happen for the fight is either Kevin. I think Kevin's best chance to win is to catch Ponzinibbio early, because in recent fights Ponzinibbio has been a bit of a slow starter, and he kind of picks up during the later rounds. I think if it was Kevin Holland kind of at his best, I do think he would win the fight. I think he would catch Ponzinibbio over and over and probably finish him. But I just think that the time since his last fight 4 months ago is just too short, because he got beat up quite badly, you know, eating head kicks and stuff. He broke his hand. If he's fighting 4 months later, that means that he's probably been training for the past 2 months. And I don't think that 2 months is really long enough to let your body heal. So I'm going to go with Santiago Ponzinibbio by decision. I think he is a bit of a slow starter recently. And I think through the course of the fight, Kevin Holland just isn't really going to look himself. And Ponzinibbio is just going to win a decision. I think Kevin's best chance to win is for like an early KO, kind of like Li Jing Liang. But my final prediction, I think Ponzinibbio by decision. So next fight we have is a fight people are looking forward to, is Adrian Yanez versus Rob Font. This is kind of Adrian Yanez's big test to see if he can make his way up the bantamweight rankings. He's got a lot of finishes, but not really against anyone of name yet, and this is kind of the test for him. They, in some ways, they have similar styles because they're both kind of boxing heavy. Rob Font is very reliant on his jab. He likes to talk about his jab. Uh, Adrian Yanez mixes it up, but his main weapon is his right hand. He's got a lot of good finishes with his right hand. I'm looking forward to this fight because both guys are probably going to bring it, and both guys have shown a lot of toughness. Rob Font took quite a nasty beating from Chito Vera, and Adrian Yanez also had a tough fight early in his career. The first round with Costa was a little bit dicey for him, but he eventually just overwhelmed Costa and put him away. I think it's safe to say that this fight is going to have a lot of boxing involved. Um, I do think that Rob Font style may be a little bit too simplistic for him. He does rely on the jab a lot, and I think if you're going to outpunch someone like Yanez, you're going to need to have a bit more versatility in your striking. A lot of people are quite high on Yanez, and I do think it's justified because he's got a lot of good finishes. He's got a lot of power for a bantamweight. He's fast, and he seems to carry the power throughout the fight as well. I think this is going to be Yanez's toughest fight because I don't think that Rob Font is just going to go away like his other opponents will. But I do think that Yanez is probably the better fighter, and I do think he's going to win. Like I said before, I think that Rob's style is just going to be a bit too simplistic. I think if he throws the jab too much, Yanez is going to time it and counter it. He's very good at timing punches, and if Rob Font wants to throw the same one over and over, I really don't think it's going to work against a guy like Yanez. I think Yanez struggles a little bit when people are faster than him, and if Rob can get his jab in quickly, I do think it's going to be a problem for Yanez. I don't think that Yanez is just going to like blast through Font like a lot of people do think, but I do think Yanez is going to win. I think that as the fight goes on, Yanez is going to start picking up on Rob's techniques a lot more. He's going to start countering, he's going to start timing Rob's punches, and I think that Yanez is going to get a late finish, maybe by a body shot. One thing that I think is really impressive about Yanez is his accuracy. He can really, especially in the 4 ounce MMA gloves, he's really good at finding his right hand over the guard and like under the guard. And I think a well placed body shot, maybe, in the later rounds, I think that could be what wins in this fight. Next up, we've got the co-main event. We've got Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal. It's an interesting fight, and people are a little bit divided on what's going to happen. Some people think that Gilbert's just going to like run through Jorge, and then some people think that Gilbert is actually a really good matchup for Jorge, and he can really utilize his skills. So a couple of things to note before we get into the prediction. Number one, Jorge Masvidal is now 38 years old, and he hasn't fought in over a year, and he's been having all of these like legal stuff going on, laws. And he's been more active. He hasn't been crazy active, but he's fought twice since Jorge fought. He fought in April, like the month after Jorge fought, and he also fought back in January. So this is actually a pretty quick turnaround for Gilbert. Last time Masvidal fought, he fought Colby Covington, and everyone knows that they hate each other. Former roommates turn into like people who hate each other. I don't think that Masvidal was like in the best mindset going into that fight, but at the end of the day, I don't really think it made much of a difference. Covington he's just relentless with his pressure, and a very bad matchup for Masvidal. Gilbert Burns was the guy that fought Khamzat Chimaev back when Khamzat Chimaev had like more fights than punches absorbed and everything, and he went to war with Khamzat, dropped him, arguably won the fight. I thought it was close, but I do think Gilbert won. And he also recently fought Neil Magny, which is a big step down in competition. No offense, Neil, but he kind of ran through Neil, just took him down and submitted him, made it look quite easy. So if we look at kind of just the momentum, it's definitely on Gilbert's side. He's been more active. Been having a lot more success in his fights. Masvidal's on a 3-fight losing streak. He hasn't won since 2019. Even in Gilbert's last loss against Khamzat, a lot of people are saying that Gilbert won. It can be kind of easy to go with this momentum and just see that Masvidal is not doing well and seeing how successful Gilbert's being and kind of, go with the momentum and see that Gilbert's just going to run through like a washed Jorge Masvidal. However, a lot of people have pointed out kind of how well Gilbert matches up for Jorge. A couple of years ago, Jorge fought Damian Maia, who's considered one of the best submission guys ever from the UFC. And Damian was on his back for like a lot of that fight, and couldn't submit Jorge. And when Jorge isn't tired, he's also got pretty good takedown defense. It didn't really show against Covington, but I do think Covington gassed him out. So Jorge has got some success against grapplers, more leaning towards the jiu-jitsu guys than the wrestlers. A lot of people are thinking about his fight with Damian Maia and like saying that because Damian Maia couldn't submit him, then Gilbert won't be able to either. And that might be true, but you do have to remember that they're two different fighters. Gilbert Burns can also be a little bit reckless when it comes to the striking. His main weapon is overhand right, and Masvidal is probably going to see that coming throughout the fight. So when it comes to the grappling, I think people are kind of underestimating the wrestling of Gilbert Burns. Like I said, I think a lot of people look at how well Masvidal defended against Damian Maia, but Damian Maia has never really had the best wrestling. He kind of had a single leg. If you watch his fight with Bilal Muhammad, he just went for the single leg so many times, and if you can defend a single leg, then you can probably defend a takedown from Damian Maia. I think that Gilbert Burns' takedowns are a lot more physical, and I think he generally just has better wrestling than Damian Maia. When it does get to the ground, Gilbert can be quite patient, especially when he's on top. And even though it might make a less entertaining fight, I do think that the patient style is going to work better for him. If he starts going for submissions, Masvidal can find a opening and get up. I don't think that Gilbert is really going to give those openings for Masvidal to stand up. And I think with the striking, I think that Masvidal, even at his older age where his reflexes may be starting to go, I think he's going to be able to see Gilbert's overhand right coming, and I do think he's probably going to counter it. Gilbert seems to have a bit of a problem with kind of jabs and straight punches, so I think that Masvidal's kind of wide hook that he's been throwing recently, I don't think that's the best shot to go for. I think if he sticks with just the straighter shots, I think he's going to have more success in the striking. Neither guy is a huge kicker. Jorge has quite a nice body kick, but I don't think he'd really be throwing that against Burns that much. So when I was thinking about this fight, I asked myself, like, how does Gilbert Burns win? And I don't think his striking style is really going to do much for Masvidal, because I think Masvidal is going to see the overhand right coming. And then when it goes to kind of the grappling, I don't know that he's going to be able to submit Masvidal. Masvidal has great submission defense. He might not have the best, takedown defense or the best just grappling defense in general, but he's shown to be a very hard guy to submit. And then when I look at how Masvidal is going to win the fight, it's obviously going to be on the feet. What I see happening is I do think he might drop Burns in the fight, catch him with a straight punch, but I think if you're Masvidal, I don't think he's going to go to the ground with Gilbert Burns, even if he does drop him. So in a weird way, both fighters kind of cancel each other out. You know, if Masvidal drops Burns, he's not going to want to go to the ground, and if Burns gets Masvidal on the ground, I don't think that he's going to be able to submit him. So if both fighters kind of cancel each other out, then who's going to win? And if both fighters cancel each other out skill wise, you kind of have to look at other factors, the ones I was talking about before. How Gilbert's been more active, he's been winning. Masvidal hasn't won in 4 years now, and he's coming off all these legal battles. I think that Masvidal isn't gonna look the best he's ever looked, and I think maybe if it was Masvidal from 2019, maybe he would beat Burns, but today I don't think he's gonna win. I think that he could have success early on, maybe drop Burns, but then when he doesn't try and finish Burns off, and the next round comes and he's tiring out, because he does gas out, especially when people grapple him. As the fight goes on, Gilbert's going to grapple more because he's not going to have success with the striking. He's going to go to his grappling, and then as he does that, Masvidal's going to gas out. So the way I see the fight going, I think Burns is going to win. I don't think it's going to be like a shutout performance like people might be expecting, but I do think that he's probably going to win on the scorecards, mostly by grappling. I think when Burns gets on top of people, they find it very hard to get him off. I think Tyron Woodley did when they fought, but I think that was just because of like it's Tyron Woodley and his like pure strength is something else. I think if Gilbert gets on top of Masvidal, especially in the later rounds, I don't think Masvidal's going to get him off. I think he can probably defend the submissions and stuff like that, but I think he's just going to kind of be stuck in the bottom position for the latter half of the fight. So yeah, my final prediction of how the fight goes, I think Masvidal is going to win the first round. He's going to have some success. I think he might drop Burns, but then Burns is going to sort of lie on his back, and Masvidal's not really going to want to enter his guard because that's a dangerous place to be. And then round 2 and 3 comes. I think Gilbert starts to grapple. I think Masvidal kind of gasses out, and I think Gilbert Burns is going to win via decision. And finally, we got the main event. We've got Alex Portan Pereira versus Israel Adesanya. The second time they're fighting in MMA, fourth time fighting overall. Alex is 3-0 against Izzy, has finished him twice. So let's get into the breakdown. So, couple things similar to the other one. Couple things to go over before the actual fight itself. Of course, you can't ignore the fact that Alex has beaten him 3 times. Twice knocked him out, you know? I think that Izzy can kind of put on a brave face and say about how he's a dog and he's been unleashed. But at the end of the day, he's lost to the same guy 3 times, and for like any rational human being, it's gonna start wearing on him a little bit. Some of the things he's been saying in recent interviews, he's been a little bit dismissive of Alex, saying like, he won because his leg was compromised and stuff like that. You, if you're gonna, win the rematch, you gotta kind of accept that you lost in the first place. Izzy's kind of dismissal attitude towards Alex, you know, yeah, he comes off as confident, but when it comes for the actual fight, I actually think it's gonna impact him in a bad way because even though he's lost to the same guy 3 times, it seems like he's not acknowledging Alex's skill. And then if we look on Alex's end, Alex, he's a bit of a troll on the internet and stuff like that, but when it comes to the actual fight, he's very respectful. Even though he has like these wins over Izzy, he's still very respectful of his skills. He's still very, aware of how good Izzy is. He hasn't been like lured into like a false sense of security. He's still very like aware that he could lose. He's still training hard. He's still, preparing the way he should be. The main problem with Israel Adesanya's attitude is that because he's been so dismissive of Alex, and he's saying like, oh, he lost the fight because of his leg, not because Alex was like the better fighter, and about how he was like dominating these fights when he wasn't. A lot of people were saying that he was like 4-0 against Alex in the fifth round, and the first round it would have gone to Alex if Izzy didn't hurt him. The second round, Alex won, and then the third round, Izzy kind of just led on him, and then the fourth round was close. So you have to kind of understand that like he wasn't dominating Alex and then got finished. That's not how the fight went at all. If Israel doesn't understand that Alex is the better fighter, then he's not gonna make the necessary changes, and the same thing's gonna happen. He's gonna have some success. Alex is gonna have some success, but ultimately Alex is gonna pull through. But enough about the like mental side. Let's get into the actual skills. First thing I think is important to mention is at the press conference, Israel Adesanya actually looked a bit more muscular than he used to, and there's also been videos of him like training wrestling. So you would think that he's gonna come out this time with a bit more wrestling because he had some success in the fight with his grappling. Not loads, but he had some success. I think that if he does come out and wrestle, it's a smarter idea, but there is a big problem. So they last fought in November, and they're fighting in a couple of days. So there's about a 5 month difference. I don't think that you can really become an amazing wrestler within 5 months. I think a guy like Adesanya, who obviously kickboxed his whole life, went to MMA, and then in terms of the grappling, it was always defensive grappling. Up until his fight with Alex, he never shot a takedown. I don't know how much your offensive wrestling can improve within 5 months, you know? If you look at like dominant wrestlers in the UFC, that didn't happen in 5 months, you know? I don't think that Izzy's wrestling with 5 months of work is gonna be enough to beat Alex Pereira. Alex is also humongous for the middleweight division, and ever since he got into the UFC, you know that he's been practicing takedown defense because that's obviously his main weakness. And if he does beat Izzy again, his next fight, whether it's like Whitaker or someone else, they're gonna wrestle him. He's not dumb. He knows that he needs to work on his takedown defense. I think with the two fights being so close together, Izzy's rate of offensive grappling improvement is not going to be higher than Alex's takedown defense rate of improvement, if that makes sense. Because Alex is going to be, practicing takedown defense and just grappling defense, and he's also a very big man. And also, now that Glover Teixeira has retired and is training Alex full time, he's getting a lot more, attention. And if you can defend takedowns from Glover, then you can defend takedowns from Israel Adesanya. So I do think that if Izzy grapples, it's not going to work. So that makes me think, if it's a striking fight, then what's going to happen? In terms of just pure striking, it's very, very close. Both guys have a lot of success, but each time Alex has pulled through, I think that the closer the rematch is, the better it serves Alex, because if the rematch was like a year later, that's a year that Israel can spend improving his grappling. Because he hasn't had very long to do it, it's not really going to be that much better, and Alex probably is going to be able to defend. What I see happening in the fight on Saturday night is I think Israel is going to kind of shoot takedowns, and then when they don't work, I think he's going to kind of panic a little bit, and I think that Alex is just going to do what he's been doing to everybody and just shut down Israel. Alex obviously has, crazy power. He's got really good finishing ability, and I do think he's going to stop Izzy again. I think that Izzy's going to shoot a takedown, and then when it kind of gets defended and he's, up against the fence, I think Alex is going to open up, and I think he's going to hurt Izzy, and I think it's going to be easier than it was before. So my final prediction for the fight, I wasn't sure what round, but I think that Alex is going to TKO Izzy, and I think it's going to be earlier than before. I think this fight is going to be a lot more dominant for Alex. So we'll say a late first round TKO. So that was my predictions for the UFC 287 main card. We'll see if they're any good. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.